I'm going to do something a little different. So I work at Mapbox. Mapbox makes maps, as the name would suggest. And maps and local have sort of been intertwined since like 2004, because local is about places. Places exist somewhere. Map seems to be a good way to show them. But one of the things that I've noticed, it just being in the business, is maps haven't changed a lot. And so at Mapbox, we're doing a bunch of pretty interesting stuff. And the central premise is if local is about data, then you ought to do something that looks good with that data. And so what I'm going to show a bunch of pictures and movies. I'm going to show no data. But I'm going to show a bunch of cool stuff that the guys in our labs do with data. And I'll warn you, a lot of this stuff's not local search, but it's just cool stuff we're doing with data that I thought could be applied to local search as we go. So let's jump in. So Mapbox builds maps. We build them for a lot of people. We have a mapping platform. We have about 65,000 active developers working on it. We touch about 250 million people. So we build a lot of maps. And each one of those guys that we build maps for, each one of those companies, has their own business model and their own thing they're trying to do. And so what we really try and do is give them a map that will allow them to customize their data to make it a competitive advantage. And the key thing there is maps are not just some cost center, something at the end of the tool chain, but it's really how are you going to go establish yourself out there. And that's kind of the key to what we're trying to do. But first what I'll do is I'll give you a little very abbreviated history of digital mapping. So this is my version. So the first map was 600 BC by the Babylonians. And the early phase went from 600 BC to 2004. And I threw a map in there there are several ex-MapQuest people. But the early stage of mapping was largely around proprietary data. Proprietary data was made into a map. The map was pushed out to people. They went around and did stuff. Every once in a while they said, hey, your data sucks, and they came back and they changed it and went back. It was essentially a one-way data flow. And that's kind of the way it was. In 2004, the amount of time from when you discovered a problem in the map to the time that problem was reported, verified, validated, put into the map database, redistributed, all that kind of stuff was about 18 months, which in 1492 was about the same amount of time it took Christopher Columbus to get a map, sail in search of China, find a large landmass in between, explore around, come back and tell the map guy your data sucks. So 18 months was kind of the thing from like then up until, and then I marked 2004 because if you were in the mapping business, you'll painfully remember that Google Maps came along and basically changed the whole thing. There were many things about that, but one thing was that Google allowed people to put their data on maps, right? It was mashups, and that was a big thing. And all of a sudden, people thought, oh, that's cool, we could do mashups, and so that became a big thing. The next milestone I put in is 2007, invention of the iPhone, and all of a sudden, we're walking around carrying this thing, and all of a sudden the world is around us. And all of a sudden we're sort of pushing buttons with these apps and we're configuring the world around us. And that was, I was at Uber for a while, and that was the big thing that Uber talked about is push a few buttons, world rearranges around you. And that really applies to a lot of mobiles. That gave growth to a lot of developers who are building things with maps. And our market is really to those developers. And then the next milestone I mentioned, when did I say it was? 2010. That's when Waze got bought for $1 billion. And Waze got bought not for data they were pushing out to the end users, but I would submit that Waze got bought for the data they were pulling back from the users. And that's been the big thing in mapping now is this two-way exchange going from map data going out and hopefully money coming back maybe to data being exchanged. Sorry, I keep whacking these things. So maps are about data. And essentially our premise is if location's about data, then really what we're trying to say is don't just put your data on a map. What we really do and what our guys in the labs work on is your data is the map. We start with your data. We start with your business model. We try and understand what you're trying to do, and then we configure the map in a way that hopefully shows that and achieves those objectives. And we think the way you do that, it becomes really a competitive advantage. So what I'm going to do is run through a bunch of things. These are all little, QuickTime movies I made on my computer. Hopefully you'll see them. I think the screen's big enough, but let's see. None of these are local search, so you're going to have to use your imagination. So this was a cool map, I thought. Y'all know what the Iditarod is? Alaska, dog sleds. So the Iditarod is some crazy dog sled thing up in Alaska. And these guys go from town to town. So it's in Alaska. Turns out Alaska has snow. It turns out it's a race, and races should, they got dogs and frostbite and all that kind of stuff. It should be exciting. And so we were doing something, we built this map, and it goes day and night. And what you see is you've got a white background, and as you go, the little clock goes around there, and as it turns dark, it goes dark. It turns to night. And what those little dots are, those are the dog sleds, and you see the leaderboard over there on the side updating in real time as people come into towns and they go to sleep and other people pass them, and I don't know, dog sleds break down or get flat tires or whatever they do. But this is a visualization of a very exciting event. And I liked it because it showed a couple different things. One, it showed, now you guys are all watching who's gonna win. You're not gonna get the end of the race, I don't know who wins. But it showed a couple things. One is, use the map to set context. This is not a street map. This is a freaking dog sled race. It's in Alaska, it's on snow. Make the map white, make it look like it's something good. It goes day and night. Use colors to change it. That's what we call dynamic runtime styling, where you can change the colors. And then it's super interactive, it's fun. It's sort of something you sit there and watch and see who wins, and you kind of do it. And so this sort of typifies a bunch of different things that we're trying to promote in maps. This is another one. Some of us spend our misspent youths in wandering the world with the Lonely Planet book, right? And you got the Lonely Planet book, and it's got subway tickets and all that stuff, and it's got a very distinct map look on it. And when Lonely Planet wanted to go digital, they wanted to maintain that branding. And so when they came and designed their map, they tried to evoke a lot of the paper map into their online digital map. So if you look at this, a lot of the fonts are the same, the sort of look and feel. What they have is they have a very powerful brand asset built over decades from all of us that are misspent youth traipsing around the world with their books, and now they're trying to replicate that in their digital one. So they did branding on it. This is another app. This is Human. Human is like a fitness tracker, activity tracker. And so, most maps end up being sort of street mappy things, right? Because a lot of maps were driven from navigation. So it ends up being street map. Human didn't care so much about that. What they really wanted to do was emphasize, is it moving? Yeah, emphasize activity. So they deprecated all the streets, and what they really did is they really emphasized their data on top of those streets, because the map was important, but you didn't have to get anywhere on it. And so they built a very unique, customized thing. The point I take from this is sometimes less is more. Sometimes you don't need all the data. Actually, what you want to do is subtract out data and make something that really shows your data better than something else. So let's take it one step further. This is kind of a crazy map, but this was a map one of the guys in our labs built, and he collected a lot of open data from, it turns out when ships go around, they beep or something and say, here I am, here I am, here I am. And he created this. So if you're ships, how important are streets to you? Well, not very, right? So if you look at this, all the land masses, all that gray stuff in there, you don't care about the streets. And what you have instead of streets is your data actually creates the streets, right? Where the ships go tell you where it is. The purple on there is water, and if you notice the shading, that's depth. Well, if you're a ship, it turns out depth is valuable on there. So we created different layers on this to show different data that was important to the application, completely outside of streets. And so this is an example of, the data determines what the map is going to do on that. So how does all this happen? This all happens, we like really invest heavily in this technology called OpenGL. As the name suggests, it's open. It's a graphics API, and essentially what you do is you send a bunch of data down to the client, and it renders on the client. And that means a couple different things. One is because you're doing it all, so if you think about a typical map, you make a query, it sends it back to the server collects the data, they process it, they put it on visuals, they send it back, displays in your browser. All the data is in the browser already, and so what you're doing is you're accessing that very quickly, and it becomes like super responsive to you. And that's one of the things we find, when it's super responsive, people tend to play with it. And that's if you're old enough to remember when Google launched, the little, what's now called the Slippy maps. it was just really cool because it was much more interactive. But this is the type of thing I see happening now, is that sort of interactivity that people get with maps. The other thing, forget it, that's not important. The other thing is we're all built in the cloud, and so the really cool thing is we ship all the stuff out and it gets done in your browser, so we get your computing power instead of paying Amazon for it, so that's cool for us. So this is my one local search map. So this is a app we did, and this is Manhattan, coincidentally, and we're looking for art. We're looking for classical music. You guys can read it better than I can. But essentially what you do is as you click it, those things come up on the map. And then you see I've got a little magnifying glass there, and I can change that to change my search. And as I change my search, you see the results column shifting. But look how responsive it is. I mean, that's the thing that I think is cool about it, is you move around and you can start seeing things. You can see what's down there, sort of more downtown. I think I go out to Queens and see what cultural events are happening in Queens. Turns out not many. We go back to Manhattan. But this is a type of responsiveness that people are starting to build into the maps. And obviously, if you click on that, you can put all your metadata and stuff in there. But that responsiveness is becoming something we see more and more. A couple more. Another cool thing that we play around with a lot is drilling down into data. So as you zoom on a map, you obviously get more and more detail about street maps, but you can also get more and more, you can start bringing up different data layers. So here, this is our new shiny office in San Francisco. That's actually where it is. As you zoom down, all of a sudden, at a certain zoom level, we go to a different set of data. We're showing the elevators. I don't know why you want to see the elevators. And as we go further down, you get to the floor plan. It's a very smooth transition that as you go to different zoom levels, you start to bring up different data. So this is really useful if you want to see something like where you're zooming in. At a high level, you see some information. As you go down, you get different information as you get further down. So you can think of stores, like here's stores, these type of stores. As you go down, maybe branding information at the very lowest level. We're seeing a lot of interest in that kind of thing. Okay, this one you're going to have to think a little bit about. This one's a little weirder. This is actually a logistics app, and so the idea is I'm going around and picking up pallets. I don't know why I'm picking up pallets, and all those pallets are a certain distance away from me, but as soon as I decide the first pallet I want to do, I want to pick up that pallet, then all of a sudden all the other pallets next to it, or all the other pickups become like cheap dates, right? Because I'm all of a sudden there, I can just bop over and get that one. And so what we're doing here and what we're showing here is based on user choice, I'm changing other things in the data so that might be convenient. So an example might be if you're thinking about travel, there may be something I really want to come see in Brooklyn. And so I'm coming over to Brooklyn to see something, but while I'm here, there might be something that would be like number 10 on my list, but if it's across the street, it becomes more interesting, the cost to go there. And so this is an example where the data and what we show is actually changed in the map based on user choice. Got one more and I'll be about done. The other cool thing is, some of you may know that last year there was a big phenomenon called Pokemon Go. Gaming has gotten like crazy, and location-based gaming has gotten crazy. And what we're really seeing is things like this, which are fanciful landscapes, and things like this, which is augmented reality. And that started in gaming, but now we're starting to see it go into discovery, and we're starting to see it go into automotive. And this is something we're real excited about. A lot of this stuff is going on. Really cool visualizations. I mean, just awesome stuff. So, bottom line, I think the mapping is going to get a lot more interesting after having been, candidly, fairly static for a while. And we're really excited about it. Love to talk to you about any of the stuff. By the way, all these apps are on our blog. When we do stuff, we blog it. We're all open source. We tell you how to do it on your own. So go have at it, and that's it. Do I have time? I have time for one question? Anyone? Okay, too late. Okay, thank you very much.